Hello everyone, and welcome to The Man Behind the Curtain. I'm Randy Young, the guy in the red shoes, and I've been in the video production business my entire career, and it's taken me around the world a few times. But more importantly, I've had the opportunity to work with some of the most creative people in television, and boy do they have stories to tell about the business and the people who make it happen. We've always been told, ignore the man behind the curtain, but you can talk to me. A career is defined by a lifelong series of choices made based on an accurate analysis of any one of 1,000 situations, opportunities, and options. Clarifying those choices is a critical action that will lead to understanding, thus better choices. My friend Peter Diamond is a leadership coach. He's trained to identify the decisions that matter, the actions necessary for your improvement, and the potential impact those actions will have as you become what he defines as your epic self. Hi, Peter.
Hi, Randy. How are you?
I'm just fine. Thank you. Thank you for having me in your home.
Of course.
Beautiful. It's great.
Thank you.
I love
My
the
pleasure.
environment. All right. So my first question to you is much like the first question I ask everybody. And I want you to start by talking me through a quick trace of your career and what led you here.
I'll start with my advertising career,
Okay.
which almost ended before it even began. So if I can take you back to 1990.
Okay.
So this was a time of mall bangs, neon colors, Depeche Mode.
Sure.
And me lucking my way into an interview at Leo Burnett here in Chicago, which at that time had just won Advertising Agency of the Year 2 years in a row. So I was so lucky to get the interview and would be even more lucky to get an offer. There was one problem that I had is...
Not a problem. Challenge.
Okay, we'll say challenge. There was one challenge.
Here I am coaching you.
Yeah, I know, it's just great. And there were a couple of challenges, actually. So we'll start with the first one. The first one was I didn't go to the elite schools that Leo Burnett was getting candidates from at that time. So at that time, they had MBA candidates from all the big elite schools. And I kind of weaseled my way in with an MBA from DePaul, which is a very fine institution, but it wasn't part of their typical roster. And I was slightly naive and a bit oblivious to the fact that I really didn't have this prestige resume that was mostly what they were looking for. One gentleman in particular who went to one of these elite schools said to me, well, what's it like getting your MBA at a school that's downtown, that sits underneath the L tracks? And I was like, well, and thankfully,
Doesn't seem fair, but
doesn't
okay.
seem fair. And thankfully, I had enough sense to be able to say, well, being downtown where culture is and where culture is happening, that's what you need to be in advertising. You need to be connected to what's actually happening in urban areas. Somehow I pulled that out of the ether, and after that point, like, it turned the whole interview completely. And we just sat down and had a great conversation. To this day, I'm convinced I was probably number 49 or 50 out of 50. Like, I'm pretty sure I just barely got in. But I knew once I got in, I would be...
Numbers don't count anymore.
Numbers don't count anymore. And actually, your resume doesn't count anymore, for the most part. So, but I got in and I spent 20 years in advertising, 13 of those at Leo Burnett. And I worked my ass off. I just knew that once I got in, I really wanted to be there. And some of the folks that went to the more prestigious universities just turned their nose up at doing a lot of the grunt work that was needed. And I just rolled up my sleeves and would get to business. And I loved it. And it was great. It was a great opportunity. And then that, in many ways, led to another career shift into executive coaching.
Well, that seems like a big left turn.
Yeah.
I mean,
So yes, well, I went from accounting.
you had to have a spirit of event or executive coaching, or an idea of it, before you decided to just do it, right?
Of course. Well, it's interesting. It's so much of what is involved in executive coaching is what you did in account management, right? There's a lot of asking questions, getting to know people, helping them try and figure out problems, sitting with them, trying to understand them. So in some respects, it wasn't a complete left turn, but yes, it was a bit of a left turn. But all of those skills, everything that I learned, you just take and you moved naturally into the next career. And I was able to actually continue to work with Leo Burnett in the capacity as being an executive coach.
Not on their staff any longer, you were
Not
then a contractor.
Yes, so I was a contractor, but very much involved in helping them develop a coaching practice.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
and continued to do that for 7 years with them after that. So
Wow.
yeah, so I kind of had a very long.
Sort of had a built-in clientele when you started.
Yeah,
That's
it was
great.
Yeah, it was great.
So, executive coaching, let's talk about
Yeah, of
that for a
course.
second. That's why we're here. And that led you to write a book,
Of course, yes.
okay? And it's called Amplify,
Yes.
right? And you broke it down into 4 steps in terms of how to amplify your life, your career. And the first one is interrogating your life. So is that a self-interrogation? Is that asking your own questions, your own realization? I mean, that's a difficult process.
Yeah, I think it is. It is very much a self-interrogation. So you're going to go through, and as best you can, because sometimes we don't always like to put the mirror up to ourselves
Certainly.
to see, but hopefully through the questions asked and the process, you can begin to look at different aspects of your life in ways that you never could, to understand where am I getting fulfillment and where am I not getting fulfillment. And some people come out of there very surprised when they begin to look at all these different areas and say, oh my God, I didn't realize how important my home was, and I've been neglecting that aspect of my life, or relationships. And so it looks at everything beyond just career.
Did you test this philosophy, this idea, this concept on yourself first?
The process I went through to get to being an executive coach was going through a coaching certification program. So it's a year-long program. And so yeah, you have to go through, as a coach, everything that you expect your client to go through. So I went through all of that, and you begin to kind of turn that mirror on yourself, and you get coached by the people that you're with, because they're learning how to be coaches. So you're in there and you're vulnerable.
You're workshopping all the time.
You're workshopping and you're vulnerable, and you have to in order to be a great coach, you have to learn how to be vulnerable, because if you're going to expect your client to be vulnerable, you've got to be vulnerable yourself. So it was a great opportunity to do that, and to have myself look at, okay, who am I? And at that point in time, what are the things that I want to continue to work on? And how can I best help people? I think for me, it was, what's the best mechanism for me to help people?
How does knowing yourself better make you better relationships to your employees, the people you manage, the people you work with? What's the basis of that?
Yeah.
How does that work?
So I'll give you, the best way for me to talk about that is kind of the role that I played in advertising. So it took me a while to realize this about myself as an executive in advertising, is that I was great at fixing problems. So I would early on in my career, I would stumble in these situations working on accounts where there were problems. And either it was the client's not happy, or the agency's not happy with the way it's being run. So there was usually somebody who was not doing a great job in that role. And I would be placed into one. I don't think anybody really thinking that I would be a great fixer, but it would be like, okay, hey, Peter, can you take this on? And for whatever it is, when I'm in a situation that's problematic, where there's a lot of things that are broken and need to be repaired,
including the people.
Including the people,
yeah.
And the relationship with the clients, I just dial right into that. And it doesn't faze me, and I'm like, okay, here's what we need to do. And it can easily begin to put together a plan on how to address it, what needs to be done, prioritizing the different elements of what needs to be addressed and fixed, and get it done and turn it around. And that was, over time, I just realized I'm a great fixer. Some people are great at doing new business. Some people are great at running really big teams. Some people are great at just being on an account that's just kind of a steady Eddie. So you need someone who can just keep good hands on the wheel. Not a lot of things are going wrong, but you need someone to be able to kind of keep it going. So that type of internal work that you can do, all of a sudden, me knowing that about myself, I can then help people better understand, well, okay, well, what kind of leader are you? And some people are also very visionary. They can just see opportunities and futures that other people can't. So that's where, as a coach, because I know that about myself, I can help bring that out in other people, whatever their best way that they operate.
Did you find creative people that you were working with and managing in your departments on your accounts needed this more than anybody else?
Some creatives are very no nonsense. They just, what do we need to do? Let's get to business. And that is kind of their MO. Other creatives, they want to sit, they want to chit chat, they want to get to know you, they kind of want to ease into things. And then there are some that need their ego stroked. And so you have to sit with them and reassure them that everything's going to be fine. And so what I have found is, if you can figure out what character you need to play with a creative, but also if they know that you're there to help them get the best work done. And so I like to think that creative people trusted me in that I was going to help them get the best possible work. And because I can help problem solve and I can help fix problems, I think they appreciate that and like that about me. So yeah, so that's how I think it helped working with creatives.
Your second step in your book, in your 4-step plan, is formulating a plan. Mm-hmm. Now, most career-oriented people, and creative people especially, have a plan, or they think they have a plan. But those plans don't always go in a straight line, and the Yellow Brick Road doesn't always lead to the Emerald City, right? There's always flying monkeys that are going to get in your way. So how do you avoid those flying monkeys? How did you get them to avoid those challenges that they find? You
know as well as I do, there's always things that come up. And whether that's clients now they've changed, there's something that's now changed in their strategy, and so now we have to change something. Maybe it's the price of doing a commercial. All of a sudden, what we wanted is now costing a lot more than what we thought it was going to be. So the ability to help problem solve and anticipate. So I think the other thing I learned a lot about working at Leo Burnett is how to anticipate. So you have to be looking 2, 3, or 4 steps down. Okay, what could go wrong? What do we have to be mindful of? What do we have to check? Which sometimes can drive a creative person crazy because they don't really know, or they don't want to think that far in advance. But if you can begin to anticipate at least some of those flying monkeys, so that you may only have one flying monkey and not 5 flying monkeys, then it's like, okay, we can deal with this. We can fix this. But that is something that I would say is a skill that I learned on the job. And sometimes you learn it the hard way, but it was an incredible skill to be able to have in life. So you kind of look at things, I look at everything that comes up and be like, okay, what else do I need to know about this? What else do I need to investigate? What other questions should I be asking?
Are those did those come up like where you'd have to grab one of the creatives, the producer or the director or the writer off to the side because the client's having a fit over here, and calm them down, calm your co-workers down and say, let's talk about the plan, let's talk about turning lemons into lemonade?
Yeah, I mean, it takes the other thing you need to have as an account person is incredible diplomacy skills.
Yes.
Because you have to be able to, in that moment, remain calm yourself, because you can't add to the craziness, right? So you kind of have to be able to be calm, but also make sure that you are asking the right questions. Because sometimes I used to joke that a client can go from loving a commercial to hating a commercial in 30 seconds. And sometimes they may say, I just don't like it. And it would be easy just to be like, okay, I don't like it, but now what are we gonna do? But then if you stop and be like, okay, well, let's talk about that. Like, you just loved it before, or you loved it a week ago, or you loved it when we were shooting it. Why, like, what is it? And a lot of times it would be things like, I don't like that color blue. It would be like stupid things.
Right.
I don't like that color blue, or I don't like that font, or the logo is not big enough, which, happens a lot. Or, I didn't like that read from the voiceover. And you're like, oh, okay, well, is everything else okay? Oh yeah, everything else is okay. But it's just, and you're like, oh, well, any of those can be fixed. So there's a little bit of like, okay, diplomacy, and how do you begin to kind of bring the heat down, and then go back, and then you have to go back and talk to the creative team and be like, okay, look, this is what's going on. What can we do? What other options? And this is also becomes, to me, was really important to understand what are the things that we want to fall on our sword for, and what are the things that we can change.
Right.
Because you can't fall on your sword for everything. If you fall on your sword for everything, you're not going to get you're not going to get anything, because the client then is going to really dig their heels in. But if you can say, okay, we can give them X, we can give them Y. Let's sit down and talk to them. I mean, the best thing to do is when the creative team will come and sit with the client and talk them through and be like, okay, look, this is what we can do. Here's what we're trying to do. Okay, what are you looking for? And get that understanding and that dialogue open. You can solve most problems. I would say it's hard for me to think of any situation in which we were at a total impasse that we couldn't somehow find a solution.
I don't know if you know this about me. I shot commercials for a little over 12 years of my career, working with all kinds of different agencies, Leo Burnett included. And I wanted to move past it because of some of those flying monkeys that get in the way that are just crazy.
Mm-hmm. We had one situation in which we had a finished commercial. It went on air, and the CEO's wife didn't like it. Even though there were no other complaints from anyone else.
Right.
And, we had to pull the spot because the CEO's wife didn't like it.
Right.
And so some of the things, those are some of the things that are funny now.
But at the time,
you're thinking to yourself, how much money was just wasted? But but that's just part of the agency business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Number 3.
And then apparently that's part of the reason why you got out. You said, I don't need to do this anymore.
I don't need to do that. I didn't think that at the time. I didn't believe anymore that commercials were a director's medium to work in. Because you're doing scene 1 for the art director, you're doing scene 2 for the producer. Scene 3 is because research needs to have it this way. And scene 4, who knows why there's an objection to it, but my opinion didn't count very often.
Yeah. So at some point in time, you have to say, okay, I can't keep hoping that the way it was is going to come back. It's moving in a different direction.
Right.
And do I want to move in that direction, or do I want to move on to something else, which I think is a great lesson for a lot of people in different careers. When you see, if you're part of an industry and it's moving in a different direction, and do you want to continue to be part of that, or and accept it and move on? Because you can't be part of it and still dig your heels in on, well, we used to do it this way, and when we used to do it this way, and this is how it used to be done. It's not going to serve you it's not going to serve you well. It's not going to serve whoever you're working for. So I think part of also career changes is sometimes, and it's a little bit happened to me, I was like, okay, I think it's time for me to go and do something else.
Well, it's kind of like when I said in my opening that it's the decisions that you make will clarify where you want to go.
Absolutely.
And they're so important to have those decisions at the top of your mind and consider them thoroughly as you change things. So that you're happy.
Yeah, and being adaptable. There's a lot of people who I was coaching in the advertising industry business who just couldn't get out of their own way. They would just dig their heels in on how it used to be. And I would say to them, look, it's the train's going in a different direction.
Right.
And then they would be upset when sometimes they would find themselves out of a job, and they'd just be shocked. And I would try and help them get to the point where they could begin to proactively think about what's next for them versus having it, foisted on them. And I think that happened a lot of people that I worked with all of a sudden got the tap on the shoulder that said, we don't need you anymore. And then they don't know what to do. And then they begin to spiral. So having some sense of, hey, is this still working for me? And do I need to be thinking about what's next for me? And very few people in today's world kind of are able to stay in a career for 40 years at a time. I think it's just,
the world has changed so much, and the career world has changed so much.
Yeah. And it can happen, but it's especially in certain fast-moving industries, advertising being one of them, technology being another one. It's difficult to think I'm going to be able to keep doing what I'm doing the way I'm doing it for the length of my career.
Does that lead us into your third point? Conquering foes? Does that mean conquering your challenges and your fears?
In the advertising or in the coaching world, and probably in the advertising world too, but in the coaching world, they talk a lot about saboteurs. Being our own worst enemy.
Sure.
What are those? So what are those? And I use the word foes just because saboteurs foes maybe seemed a little bit friendlier. I don't know. You can tell me. But I think we have to begin to look at how are we getting in our own way? What are some of the stories we can continue to tell about ourselves that are no longer serving us, so that we can move on? There's a very common foe is being the victim. All of this is happening to me. This is I'm doing everything right, but why do all these bad things keep happening to me? So it's being able to help clients hear some of that language and be able to say, let's talk about this. This sounds like, you're in this kind of victimhood situation. How do you want to, and help them see it, which is tough. Conquering your foes is very tough because a lot of people don't want to see it because they don't want to have to change, or they don't want to have to address it, because addressing it means I have to see something in myself that I may not want to see, and then I have to do something about it.
Right.
And human nature sometimes gets in the way of that. Yeah.
Are these fears and foes, are they ever a single focus, or are they always a Herculean hydra? You cut a head off and you got 3 more heads coming at you. Or is thinking it's a single focus just too simple?
I think there are, I don't want to say it's like a crazy, like 7-headed monster, but I think we all have certain things that, and a lot of them happen kind of our early childhood. Mm-hmm. And there are certain things, or maybe early in our career, that we do hold on to. I think they all can be addressed. I don't think new ones continue to pop up. But sometimes it takes some work to address them. So if we go back to this whole idea of kind of victimhood, it may show up in different ways in your life. So you may have to say, I'm feeling a little bit of a victimhood in relationships, in my career, even just with things that may be happening in the outside world. So you may have to kind of look at them in different aspects, but I think they are all new ones. Typically new ones don't show up. At least that's my experience. Other people may have a different opinion on that. But I think there's definitely an ability to begin to kind of address them so they don't overwhelm you. Or at least how do you quiet them so that they maybe only are there as a murmur versus screaming at you all the time.
Well, we don't want that. And your fourth one, as we come to this, is adapting the changes you desire.
Yeah. Change is happening around us all the time. And the better we can be at accepting it, and maybe even finding a little joy in it, will make your life so much better. And the more you can become adaptable, just the easier it is to kind of flow through life. And I think that's what we're all trying to do, is how do we flow through life a little bit with a little more grace, with a little bit more ease, and being adaptable is a big one.
The last part of your book is a list of attainable goals, and you recommend certain things to do. If we follow that list and follow your advice, are we all going to be better?
I think you have to look at, whenever someone is giving counsel or advice, you have to ask yourself, does this feel right for me? And not just do things because someone is saying to do it. So yes, I had some suggestions in there, and I think there's things that people will pull out and say, oh, that feels good to me, that feels right for me. And then you begin to put together your own way of kind of living that feels right for you. That's kind of my approach. So you share what you think are some good best practices, and you hope there are things in there that people can relate to and take and use as part of their life.
And part of that is conquering the fears.
Part of that's conquering the fears.
Recognizing the fears.
Recognize it is a big one.
And recognizing the changes that are happening.
Recognizing that changes are going to happen and it's inevitable, and I'm not going to fight it. I'm not going to fight it unless, so there's always like a big caveat, unless the change is really something that is with ill intent. Like if there's really kind of ill intent in that change, you may want to go out and fight against that. But I'm talking about everyday, most change that happens with people in their everyday life is just learn how to problem solve and roll with it.
Wow.
Yeah. How do you feel about that? Like, so as I'm saying that to you, what is your initial reaction to that?
I think it sounds easier than it really is to do. Mm-hmm. I think from everybody's personal standpoint, they have to face the challenges that they look at every day and realize that their concept of what A is not everybody's concept of what mm-hmm. A is. And you have to look at what A plus 1 might be, or A plus 2, and how do you get to be where the other person wants to live. And it's compromise, it's understanding, it's trying to get through your life every day, because there's changes every day, especially today. I mean, how fast are we changing?
It's happening fast. It's happening really fast. But here, I will ask you, you've been in your business now for how many years?
Almost 50.
Almost 50 years.
Yeah.
And has it changed?
Oh, tremendously.
And has it changed in the last 2 years?
Yes.
So, and what do you do, and how do you then manage those changes?
I think you have to learn what the new change is, adapt what you thought about a week ago, 2 weeks ago, a year ago, and adapt those changes into making those things work to accomplish the same purpose. Most of the change in my business has made life easier to do things. You know, you used to have, you know, we're sitting here in front of these cameras that are the size of your fist, and those cameras used to be the size of a car. Mm-hmm. So it's easier to do it that way now, and you adapt to those changes. And then you realize that you can do more with them, do it in more different ways. Do the things that you thought about 30 years ago that were really difficult to do, and you couldn't do them, and now you can. That's a good thing.
Yeah.
So you adapt.
I think this is where you kind of have to ask yourself, how do I want to be living this life? What do I want to be doing in this life? And do I want to be resisting change and always kind of in this resistance? Or do I want to accept it and be able to kind of move through it a little bit more freely and easily?
So I think what you're saying is that we really need to embrace the changes and the evolution and the motion going forward. Embrace it because it's there. It's there. It's going to be better for you.
It's going to be better for it, and the better you can, the more open you can be about it, I think the less phased you become about it.
I'll try to embrace it, and
all right.
I'll try to create my epic life. All right.
Keep me posted on how it's going.
Great. Thank you, Peter.
Of course.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.